to have spent so much of your time as a journalist having covered this person, having gotten to know, I would think, so much in detail, that which we are all now just beginning to find out, and then to have it crescendo with this announcement that she is now going to ascend to top of ticket. That announcement came a little over a week ago, I guess. For you, it's as though you've met your moment with this book, Kamala's Way.
Well, to go back, I wrote this book at the end of 2020. The goal, so Simon Schuster's a publisher, Simon Schuster's goal, and therefore mine, was to have it published before the inauguration in 2021. So we succeeded. So I know a fair bit about Kamala Harris from her California days. I don't know very much about, I mean, I've read, obviously, I'm very interested in how she's comported herself as vice president, how she's been portrayed as vice president. But really what this book is, it's Kamala's Way in American life, but it really could be Kamala's Way at California life, because that's what I know. That's what I...
that's what you covered for so long from Sacramento, I guess, and beyond. But how does that inform, though, her? I think it does inform a lot of who she is now, and it's even talked about a lot from the standpoint of defending certain things about her record and the way she handled her various public life in California.
Well, she is a Californian. So because she's a Californian, she's born at Kaiser in Oakland, grew up for her first 12 years or so in Berkeley. Parents, as I'm sure your listeners know, her mom immigrated from India, her father from Jamaica. They met at UC Berkeley. She became a cancer researcher. He became a tenured professor of economics over at Stanford. Very high achieving and impressive people. They split when she was a young girl. She and her sister Maya were young girls. So yeah, this all informs her. She grew up, though, in high school in Montreal. Her mother got a job up at McGill University in Quebec, and so Kamala Harris spent her high school years in Quebec. But she was a prosecutor, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think for you have a sense of us knowing more than maybe we know. You know what I mean? I think it's all fascinating. And I think it's weird to talk to a guy who's sort of like so steeped in it that you may think that, I feel it's a little like politics generally in America. We all assume, they know about such and such, and like nobody knows about 9/10 of the stuff that probably we should know about. And so it is even with basic biography of Kamala Harris that I feel like I've got gaps even in what I know in my history.
It's kind of funny. That's a very California way of life. I certainly dealt with this all the years when I was a political writer, especially most of that time covering policy and politics for the Los Angeles Times. It's kind of funny. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, was an entertainment lawyer in Century City, managing partner of a big national law firm, the LA office of a big national law firm. And two of his clients happened to be billionaire entertainment clients. At the end of a meeting, she said to him, would you want to date Kamala? Would you mind if I made an introduction with Kamala Harris? And so Doug Emhoff, this high-powered Century City lawyer, said, Kamala Harris, where do I know that name? Right. So she was California Attorney General, and her, ultimately her husband, when they first brought her up, these folks who were setting him up with her, didn't know who she was. So I just view that as such a California story.
That's marvelous. It's marvelous. And, there's a lot here, and there's a biography, and there's who she is, and then there's who she is as a politician. And then there's who she is as a politician that's relevant to what she is now embarking upon. So I'm going to kind of start with that last part first, and then maybe we can go back, because I think that you have a sense of something that is oftentimes criticized when looking at Kamala Harris, and that is the last campaign that she ran, which you covered closely. I mean, for president. There was a lot of criticism about her organization and her organization's skill and people who were part of that orbit. I wonder if you could speak to that. Is that a legitimate deficit? I mean, a legitimate area of criticism when it comes to Kamala Harris? And if so, how is she seeming to have addressed it this time?
Well, so I didn't cover the campaign. The campaign happened during COVID, and so
I
I
see.
was,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I did reconstruct it for the end of the book, the chapters. Yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess of a campaign. The people who ran it acknowledged that there were missteps. She made missteps. She took different positions on key issues such as healthcare and medical care, healthcare for all. She was kind of on different sides of that issue. So yeah, she stumbled. She was smart enough, though. Well, first of all, she understood when she decided to run that her chance of winning was, I don't know, 10%, right? I mean, lots of people run for president, only 46 have succeeded.
And it was a crowded field.
It was a very crowded field, a very talented field. So she ran to win, but she understood that her odds were long. And they were, and she saw that she wasn't going to get anywhere with the Iowa caucuses, and so she pulled out before Iowa, and then significantly also she pulled out before her name would have appeared on the California ballot. She probably would not have won her home state, which would have been really quite difficult. At the same time, being a United States senator is not a bad job, and so she returned to Washington to become a senator and focused on that for the next year until Biden picked her as his running mate. And so when you think about it, yeah, she didn't do well in the primary and she pulled out, but she did become vice president. So, I guess the second place is not all that bad.
It's interesting, too, that she's now being hit with this, what I think is an offensive, unvarnished bit of, well, I think it's informed by misogyny and racism and all this sort of she's the DEI hire, that's what you hear from the GOP. You hear about it openly, and it's another way to diminish her. And this is I'm not some big Kamala defender, but I'm offended. I'm immensely offended by that, because you got a guy on the other side in Donald Trump and also in J.D. Vance, who, in my taking of the measure of things, just can't even hold a candle to Kamala Harris. I'm talking about intellectually and talking about understanding issues. We know Trump can't, and J.D. Vance hasn't been in Congress an hour. I mean, it's unbelievable that he can then talk. If anybody was placed in a job by someone else, it's the way Peter Thiel and the little Trump, Don Jr., little Don Jr. and Eric got their daddy's ear, and they said, we think this guy, J.D. Vance, is your legacy, to continue your legacy. So it's Peter Thiel placement, and then those two guys, and then this guy who has no abilities whatever, I think, from a public service standpoint, ends up. These are my views, not yours, and you can react any way you want, but I think the part that applies to you is that she, Kamala Harris, someone who you know and have reported on for many, many years, has to handle with this DEI stuff. It's offensive to me.
Well, it is offensive, Mark, and it's just flat wrong. I mean, she didn't go to Yale, unlike J.D. Vance, who went to Yale Law School, right? Big fancy law school. She went to Howard University, which is a great historically Black college in Washington, D.C. And then she went to University of California, Hastings School of Law. Now it's University of California, San Francisco School of Law. Which is a very good college, very good law school. At one point, a majority of the California Supreme Court had gone to Hastings, then called Hastings. So it's a very good law school, but it's not Yale. It's not Columbia. Right? And she gets out of Hastings and she goes to work as a prosecutor in Alameda County. Now, you and I know Alameda County in Oakland's a pretty tough place. And at that time, when she started there in 1990, 91, it had it was setting records in terms of homicide. So it was a tough place to work. Significant crime issues. She put in her time there. I mean, is that DEI? I mean, to me, that's public service. I think we all kind of want good prosecutors, people who are skilled. She was that. And then she goes across the bay. I think she was probably thinking about maybe at some point running for San Francisco District Attorney, but she got hired by then District Attorney Terrence Hallinan to be a supervisor. She supervised cases in the DA's office. She worked hard. If you read Kamala's Way, you'll see detail about things she did as an assistant attorney general. Then she works for the city attorney over there, working in family law. I mean, this is not, this is public service stuff. Now,
Sure.
Did she want to run for DA? Did she want to run for attorney general? I mean, okay, that's fine. Ambition is part of, nobody gets anywhere if they don't have ambition. I think Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have ambition. Think about J.D. Vance. He gets out of law school and goes to work as a venture capitalist, really, in San Francisco, working for Peter Thiel, and becomes a Peter Thiel protege. I'm not seeing a lot of public service there. Are you?
Well, not only that, there's no public service there, and he washed out of that job. Thiel put him in another job, one of his companies, and he didn't do particularly well at that. Then he ended up in a third venture cap situation that went okay, and Thiel then plucked him out, put $15 million into a Senate campaign, essentially bought the seat in the Senate for J.D. Vance. This is my take on it, not yours, but I feel that's how J.D. Vance is even part of this conversation. And then J.D. Vance, as I've mentioned, is plucked to become vice president. So this guy has no public service that I can find except for the, as I say, hour that he spent as a senator.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a few more than an hour, a little more than an hour. Come on, Mark.
He's been there
a year and a half.
All right. Yeah. He's just figured out where the men's room is, and now he's looking at another building. So, what about the relationship that Kamala Harris had with Willie Brown? Speak to that, because we hear about it a lot. What was it, first of all? And I don't know.
Well, I mean,
it was a romantic relationship, right?
Yes, without a doubt. I should say that in the DA's race, so it ended in 1995, right? So it's 30 years ago. She was young. She was in her late 20s, and he was older. It's been used against her in campaigns. It was certainly used against her in her run for district attorney in San Francisco in 2003. It was used again against her when she ran for attorney general. It hasn't worked. I don't know. It hasn't worked as a campaign issue, and I mean, people do things when they're younger. She's been married to Doug Emhoff for more than a decade now, and from everything I can gather, it's a very solid relationship.
Oh, yeah. This is all about, I mean, there's not even a question about that. This is the kind of thing, though, in our chat. Mars says, Willie Brown and California backdoor politics convinced her opponents in close races to step down, DA and then the attorney general races. Can you speak to that, please?
Well, I don't know about potential opponents in the DA's race who stepped aside because of Willie Brown. One of the things Willie Brown is loyal to his friends, and so you bet. I think he helped Kamala Harris long after whatever their relationship was ended, and urged, as I write in Kamala's Way, urged at least one prominent opponent, Antonio Villaraigosa, who's now running for California governor for a second time. Villaraigosa was L.A. mayor, was Assembly Speaker, and he was contemplating running against her for the U.S. Senate. And Mayor Brown, out of office, private citizen, urged that Villaraigosa not run. Villaraigosa really wanted to be governor anyway, and so he didn't run. One of the things that she is very good at, and we saw that in the past week, is clearing the field. Right? She had a race in 2010, a primary race against. I think there were 5 serious Democrats running against her. They were all men, and so as the only woman, that gave her a political leg up in that primary. Now, there was another woman who was contemplating running, and she would have been formidable, Jackie Speer, who then was in Congress and spent a lot of years in the state legislature, very accomplished politician. And as she was contemplating whether or not to get in, Harris's folks let known that Harris had over $2 million in her campaign account. Congresswoman Speer would have had to have started from the beginning, and it just it helped clear the field of another significant woman running. When she ran for re-election for DA and for Attorney General, she ran unopposed. When she ran for the U.S. Senate, she had a candidate run against her, but not a well-known candidate, member of Congress, Loretta Sanchez, and Harris won that primary easily. So she's very good at clearing the field, and we saw that this past week. Nobody ran against her. Nobody made an effort to challenge her.
There has to be a political calculus to a lot of stuff. Sometimes it can seem like a cold calculation, but that is politics. Sadly, it's not just about purity of heart and purity of political philosophy. You have to weigh in on a lot of stuff you'd prefer not to, and you have to position yourself in the 3D chess of politics. So I think you kind of spoken to some of that. Tell me what you think just now, just us girls talking. What do you think the reality is for her growing into the role as a presidential candidate? I've been impressed that obviously it's been a fast start, but you know her well. I mean, you know the politics, who the person is within the political atmosphere that she has to operate.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's been caricatured during her time as vice president as not very good, not very adept, and just all manner of ways. And it doesn't surprise me. Washington is a tough town politically, and there were a lot of people out on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, who had reason not to be a fan of Kamala Harris. But I saw her in 3 statewide campaigns here, and now I realize I'm just a Californian. I've been involved in coverage of a few presidential campaigns, but I'm primarily a state house reporter, so I may not be quite as brilliant as some of the people who cover national campaigns. That said, I've covered a few state campaigns, and she's pretty good. I mean, she is good at what she does. She can be very good in a small room. She can be good, certainly before an editorial board, where she came into the Sacramento Bee and answered our questions, except for those which she chose not to answer. And she's very good at not answering questions too. But that's good. It's good. She's good at being a politician. So what I saw was a very adept, could be very charming politician, quick on her feet, very good in debates. I moderated her one and only debate in 2010, and she, she's very good. I mean, she was a courtroom lawyer. She has to be quick on her feet. And then I covered her debate when she ran for U.S. Senate. She's very good in a debate. So yeah, I didn't quite get the caricature of her that I've been reading for the last 3.5, 4 years.
Well, it's the cartoonish ways that both sides are kind of described now can be a bit much.
But your question was, though, can she grow as a candidate? I mean, I think she's a very what I witness is that she's a very good candidate. Now, it's hard to run for the president, and that's a tall order. So we'll see how it turns out. 99 days as of today.
Such interesting. I'm just reading Politico. Read your book, loved it. Says offers an essential roadmap to the career of Kamala Harris from the beginning, handling child molestation cases and homicides for the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in her relationship as a 29-year-old with the most powerful man in the state, married Assembly Speaker Willie Brown, a relationship that would prove life-changing. And then they said, it's essential reading for all Americans curious about the woman standing by Joe Biden's side. Look at you, Dan Morain. Well-praised work. The book we're going to have a link to, okay? Under this video, you can find a link to Dan Morain's book, Kamala's Way, An American Life. What were you surprised by in covering Kamala Harris all those years? Anything in particular?
Well, I've covered a few California politicians, and I mean, I always thought she was really an interesting politician, charismatic and all like that. I never had I certainly had no desire to write a biography of her. It fell into my lap, the concept of writing a biography of her. And what surprised me is after spending, a very intense period of time, not a very long time, but an intense period of time doing interviews and doing research, not talking to her, she didn't help with the book, is that I found her to be a lot more layered than I had thought, more interesting than I had thought. So, she's an impressive person. She can be, as a journalist, she could be a little frustrating to cover. Like I say, she knows how to say no. I'm not going to answer that question. And you can ask it 10 different ways and she'll still say, no, I'm not going to answer that. Yeah, it can be frustrating for reporters, But she's a very interesting, multi-layered person. I can't say that I know her personally well. She doesn't let a lot of people inside to see, kind of who she is, what makes her tick. So there are fundamental things about her I don't know. And that if I had, an hour to sit down or even 10 minutes to sit down with her, I certainly would ask her certain questions about her past and about her opinions. We don't know. Maybe we'll find out in the next few days.
Well, I would hope that you get a chance to, at some point, follow up with her, especially having authored a book about her. But until then, we will, she's living out loud a lot of everything right now because of her profile. Such a pleasure to meet you. I'm really sorry that Kim couldn't be here.
Oh, so am I. But, we get by. We'll get by.
But, her loss is my gain. Again, Kamala's Way, An American Life. There will be a link to it underneath this video and underneath the breakout video that we'll do. So, Dan, wish you the very best. Wish you well. And I hope you'll come back and visit soon, especially if Kamala continues to rise. So,
anytime. Thanks for inviting me.
All the best. Dan Morain, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.